Welcome on board a daily adventure to discover true wisdom, authentic hope, a stronger faith, and profound joy. This is the Debbie Chavez Show.
You're a shining star, no matter who you are. Shine bright to see what you can truly be, what you can truly be.
Welcome, friends and neighbors. It is so good to be back together again with all of you as we journey through this life together toward hope, wisdom, and joy. And on the show today, help for women who feel, well, kind of lost or kind of alone or anxious or feeling that they just don't quite measure up to the other women or whatever it might be. We've all probably felt all of those emotions once upon a time, right? Well, my guest, Debora Coty, is going to guide us toward feeling a lot better. Let's just put it that way. Maybe even experiencing God's amazing, extravagant love. Maybe becoming confident women. Ooh, wouldn't that be nice? That's coming up in just a moment. But before we get there, for those of you who are regular listeners, you know that we start off every show with just a small Bible-based pearl of wisdom for all the wives out there.
We are family. Hey, I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing.
And actually, this little pearl of wisdom would apply to wives, but also women who hope to be a wife someday, right? And here's where I want to start on this little thought of the day for you. My children take rather perverse pleasure in reminiscing about this one Christmas when I was newly divorced from my first husband of 18 years. My children were 16 and 14, I think, at the time. And I know I wanted to keep as many traditions in place as I possibly could, because there's that hard transition for all of us after a divorce. And so I'm trying to keep things as normal, quote unquote, as I can for the kids. And so I announced that, hey, as usual, kids, we're going to cut down our Christmas tree from a local tree farm, just like we always have. Yeah, well, just before we took off to go cut down our Christmas tree, as, the whole family used to do, I realized I didn't have a way to tie the tree to the top of my SUV. My ex-husband had always done all that stuff, right? And I thought, I have to be able to secure the tree to the top of the roof of my SUV. But hey, I'm reasonably intelligent, or so I thought. And I wasn't going to let anything deter me from this tradition. So I searched my new house for something resembling a bungee cord. Couldn't find anything. Searched for something resembling a rope. Alas, there was no rope in sight. I didn't own any bungee cords either. All I had was some sewing thread. Well, maybe if I use a whole bunch of thread, that will work, right? Yeah. So off we went to get our beautiful Christmas tree and continue on with the tradition, right? My son cut it down successfully. Unlike me, apparently, he knew how to handle his part of this operation. We hoisted the tree to the top of the SUV, and then I carefully wove my spool of thread back and forth across the tree to secure it to the roof. And my kids just kind of shook their heads in amazement or bewilderment or something. But I made sure that I had several, layers of this thread because I thought, well, layers of thread. And so then we took off and we actually made it about a half mile before the tree took a slow, inelegant slide from the top of our car to the middle of the road. Splat. Okay, why am I sharing this wonderful story with you? Well, it's a reminder to both you and me that a tiny thread is not sufficient to hold anything that's very substantial. It can't hold a tree, and it can't hold you and your husband together either. I needed rope for that tree. And you and I, if you're married, you and I need a cord of 3 strands to hold our marriages together. A cord of 3 strands represents you, your husband, and God. We need God to build a strong rope. Without him, we'll likely take a slow slide from safety and go splat, just like my Christmas tree. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, "Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." Just a reminder, if you're married or even thinking about getting married, are you keeping God in the center of your relationship? It'll go much better for you. Well, from that, let's talk about something that would apply to all women. Well, really men too, but particularly women. Sometimes we feel kind of lost, alone, insecure, neurotic, just all of those things. And what to do. Well, we invite to the program someone who has been through it and come out on the other side and has some pearls of wisdom to offer. Speaker and award-winning author Debora Coty. Hi there, Debora.
Hi, Deb. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be back.
Yes. Delightful to have you back. You're out with a brand new book, Too Loved to Be Lost. I love that concept because, sometimes we do feel a little bit like, we're just barely, we're treading water. We're barely keeping our head above water for whatever reason. Maybe we just had a serious blow to a relationship, or our finances are going under, or whatever. Or we just feel kind of lost and we can't seem to feel a connection with God. And so we want to bring some hope to women today that God is there, that he has an extravagant love for us. But let's start out here, Debora, so that women know that you can relate to them. Have you ever felt really kind of lost, alone, insecure, neurotic, any of those things?
Well, I'm neurotic most of the time. At least my husband would say so.
Oh, dear.
But as far as the lost, and being in the desert, I absolutely have. I went through a period of time, a little over 2-year period of time, following 6 heartbreaking miscarriages. Oh. And my husband we both went into kind of depression in our own little deserts. Mine lasted a little over 2 years. His lasted 10.
Wow.
And we went to that, bottom line of our faith, which we all tend to do when we go through those desert times, to question the very basics. Is Papa God there? And if he is there, is he hearing my pleas? And if he decides to not listen to my prayers or answer my prayers, or so it seems at the time, then we have to decide if we choose to place our trust in him regardless of not getting it the way we want to get it or we wish we would get it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, indeed, I have had a lot of those lost times myself, and I believe all women go through those times where we feel lost and we're just kind of wandering in the desert. And that's why I wrote this book. I want us to be able to realize that even during those times, Papa God's love is there, and we can bank on the scriptures like Hebrews 13:5. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.
Yes.
Psalm 136:1. God's love never fails.
That is awesome. And, right off the bat here, we have to ask you this question, and you actually talk about this in the introduction to your book, that you refer to God as Papa God. Now, why do you call him that?
Well, it's actually a biblically based idea. The Abba term is an Aramaic term used in the Old Testament that Jesus actually used in the New Testament for God. It's the intimate relationship connotation of it, like we would interpret it today as Papa or Daddy.
Yeah.
And I started using that fluently back when I wrote the book The Distant Shore. It was my first book. It was historical fiction based on a true story of a young girl's journey, amazing, incredible journey of faith, back on old-time Merritt Island in 1904. And this young gal, in the memoir I was using to write the book, she was estranged from her family, pretty much abandoned, and she had no earthly papa, so she was introduced by a kindly sea captain to who she began to call Papa God, who took that role of her papa since she didn't have one on earth. And that just brings Papa God to me in a whole different, what I call, perspective on his nature. And that ties in exactly with the unconditional love that we're talking about in this book, Too Loved to Be Lost.
I love that, Papa God. I mean, and you're right, it is biblically based because Abba is translated in a warm, affectionate, daddy kind of way. And for many women, what they're hearing right now might even just be kind of like rocking their world in a good way, because often we have this picture of God, especially if you grew up in certain denominations or whatnot, that God is kind of stern, taskmaster. He's always displeased with us, will never measure up. And this warm daddy, Papa God kind of image is way different for so many women, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it truly is. And in my travels as a speaker for women's groups, I have encountered just tons of women who view God as that judgmental and personal entity with a big frown and a huge stick, just waiting, hovering nearby, waiting to smite us to smithereens when we mess up. And, you know, I don't like that perspective, because I think people take it a little far. Sure, our Heavenly Father is holy, and He is just, and He's righteous, and He wants us to be too, but that doesn't make Him a mean, old, hulking principal hovering in the hall with a big paddle. He has so many other attributes as well. He's kind, He's merciful, He's faithful, He's slow to anger, and especially for this book, He's unconditionally loving. And that's the attribute I want to focus on.
Well, and let's unpack unconditional love, because, I mean, that's even the subtitle of your book, you know, Discovering God's Intentional, Unconditional, Without Limits Love. And some people are going to maybe even give some pushback here, Deborah, so let's just address this from the get-go. Some are going to say, well, wait a minute. Unconditional. So you're saying, and I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, okay? But you're
Sure.
so are you saying, Deborah, that I can just live my life any way I want? I can just go recklessly sinning here and there and not even give a whit, and God's just going to unconditionally love me anyway? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. Yes and no.
Okay.
I think that when we do enter into that love, that when we fall into Papa God's love, we can't fall back out of it. And we can't do anything so vile and disgusting and repulsive that He will completely sever that relationship with us. But it does make Him sad. When we do not choose to honor Him and we make bad choices that reflect poorly on our relationship with Him, it makes Him very sad, and sometimes to the point where our relationship is strained, where there may be only a remnant, a few cords left. But there's always hope when that remnant exists, and it does. And He will always welcome us back into the fold.
Yes.
We have plenty of examples of that in the Bible, of course, and I've had that, and you've had that in our own lives.
Yes.
So it's just it's an unconditional love, a love that will not give up on us.
And, you know, David is such a great example, don't you think? I mean, here he, you know, commits adultery, and then he pretty much, you know, puts a hit out for the husband of the woman he had the affair with. And, I mean, you know, so these are really, really not good things. And he was pretty deliberate about it. So, you know, he was entering into sin, and he knew it. And yet, you know, he repents, and God welcomes him back. And God says, you know, David's a man after His own heart. I mean, so, wow, if, you know, that gives us hope, doesn't it, that we have this unconditional love from our Father.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we need to remind ourselves of, because we just get so stuck in our little worlds of self-condemnation and feeling bad about ourselves for our guilt or for whatever. I have a section in the book about feeling like a have-not in a world full of haves. And we can get so down on ourselves. I call it innies and outies, where we just get so bogged down. We think God would never want to have anything more to do with me. I'm worthless. And we get into that feeling, not because of what other people make us feel, or certainly not what God makes us feel, but what we make ourselves feel through our own guilt, basically. So I think there's some ways we can deal with that. We can morph. You know, there's going to be ways times when we are have-nots, when we feel like we're not going to be a have in every single group that we find ourselves. But there is a way we can morph from a humiliated have-not to a happy have-not. And that's been life transformational for me. I belong to a group where I am a have-not, and it's obvious. I'm at the lowest end of the continuum in that group. There are people who are far more skilled than me, and they know it, and I know it, and we all know it. And I've got to stay in that group. There's no way around it. And I've had to come to grips with that, with being a have-not. Am I going to sulk around and feel miserable all the time because I am a humiliated have-not, or can I change that perspective? And the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, we don't have to drudge around on our bellies with scuff marks, you know, because we feel so badly about being have-not. I shared this with some other ladies in the same group who were in the same position I am, And we've all seen an amazing difference in our lives since we began striving to be a happy have-not.
You know, in this part of the book, you talk about you have an acronym or a acrostic or whatever you want to call it, cuddle. So you say when you're feeling unloved, unlovable, like the have-not, this cuddle acrostic might help. And I'm not expecting you to necessarily remember this off the top of your head, unless you happen to.
Well, I do know that one. I depend on it myself.
Good.
It's a CUDDLE. The C stands for climb up. Climb up into Papa God's lap like when you were a little girl and you just needed those big warm arms to wrap around you, and you needed to hear that gentle, loving voice whisper, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can get that from Papa God like you used to from your parents. Because he is your parent. He's your heavenly parent. He loves you even far more unconditionally than your parents.
Yep.
And then the U in cuddle is for unload. Drop the heavy load that you carry, the one that drags you down and keeps you feeling perpetually bad about yourself. Often that load is exacerbated by fatigue. So it would definitely be important to take a look at your schedule and consider a diagnosis of calendar constipation. You know, sometimes, I'm sorry to be crude, but it's the truth, and sometimes we just need an activity enema, you know?
Oh, my goodness, that is so colorful and descriptive and so accurate.
And then the first D in cuddle is for daydream, my favorite. You know, refuse to answer your phone for a whole hour.
Whoa.
Step away from your to-do list, ignore your email, and unplug emotionally. And then I recommend, I have, in some of my other books, I have some he and me retreats I talk about. But this is kind of like a he and me retreat on a mini scale. I recommend 3 days if you can get away with no one but Papa God and you. But we can't always do that. So this is like an hour mini he and me retreat. And I have some recommendations on what you can do, and one of them is to daydream. Ask yourself a fun, open-ended question like, where would I go on vacation if I could go anywhere in the world and money was no object? You know, allow your imagination to run wild like it used to. In those carefree days in your childhood when you'd wake up in the morning and you'd have a whole day to fill up however you'd like.
Yes.
You know, we don't have those gigantic windows of happiness now, but we can have a little window.
Yeah.
And the next D in cuddle is for dance. And that one's so important because we don't allow ourselves to even hear that music down in our souls sometimes. We keep that volume muted.
Yeah.
But if we can fling out our arms and boogie in a sunbeam, you know, let your bad self down in the cookie aisle, twirl in a rain, you know, dance till you drop. And it is, so much better than collapsing from stress-induced exhaustion. And then the L in cuddle is for let go. And what I mean by that is to let go of your imagined unworthiness. Just like we talked about a little while ago, that unworthiness doesn't come from anyone but ourselves. And we have to realize that to Papa God, we are the most important person in the world. We are cherished.
Yes.
No one can make us feel unloved without our permission. And Papa God has said he will never reject us.
I love that.
And then the E in cuddle, I'm sorry, were you trying to say something?
I just said I love that. Okay, but now let's get to the E.
And the E is evolve. Evolve into a higher being. Once you climb down from Papa God's lap, refresh, you can't turn around and go right back to the same behaviors that sent you screaming into the night. You know, we're not dogs returning to their vomit. We are tenderly cuddled women of God, and we are adored and beloved, and we need to act like our own BFFs because and I consider that blessed friend forever. And when others see how much we respect ourselves, they will then respect us too. I have an awesome story in the book. I don't know if I have time to tell you about this, but it's about a gal who could have easily considered herself a humiliated have-not because of her circumstances, but she absolutely refused.
Well, I think you need to tell us that story when we come back. So let's take our first break. When we come back, I want to hear the story. And then I also want to hear about developing strength for whatever we're facing right now. And women are facing all sorts of different challenges. And you recommend memorizing Scripture. And right away, women are rolling their eyes and saying, oh, you don't know, I can't memorize Scripture. Well, you've got some thoughts on that, too. So we'll get to both of those things, the story and how to memorize Scripture. We'll do that in just a moment with my guest, Debora Coty. Her book is called Too Loved to Be Lost.
But there's a light I still see.
Back on the program with author and speaker Debora Coty. Her new book is called Too Loved to Be Lost. And Debora, you were going to tell us a story that you have in the book about a woman who felt like she did not have what it took or something?
Yeah, she was, because of her position, and you'll see what I mean when I start telling you the story, she could have easily considered herself a humiliated have-not, like so many of us. But she didn't. She wouldn't. She refused. And it started for me when I went to the county fair. And, just picture what those fairgrounds are like.
Oh, yeah.
So the moment I entered the restroom in the middle of the fairgrounds, I knew that it was different. Because unlike the grody, grimy, disgusting, get your business over quickly and get out of this nasty place feeling that you usually get, this one was amazing. It actually gleamed. In fact, it had this ethereal feel to it, if you can imagine that. There was no black, icky grime in the corners. There were no stray sprinkles or puddles on the floor. No graffiti anywhere in sight. Everything was shiny, and it smelled nice. This little whiff of gardenia scented the air, and somebody was humming with this very nice, pleasant voice. And I thought, oh, my goodness, this is so nice. This is like the kind of place you want to just kick back and stay for a while. And I just forgot. I'm in the bowels of a county fair midway.
Yeah.
And so as I exited the stall, I noticed these two women, white uniformed women, busy polishing all the counters and the sinks. And I realized one of them was the one humming and singing. And so I went over to her and I just, thanked her. I said, I can't help but notice the surprising cleanliness of this bathroom. It's awesome. And her reaction was just amazing. She straightened up, held her head up high. She smiled from ear to ear. And she said, there's not a speck of dirt beneath, behind, or across our seats. You can go to any other bathroom in this whole park, and trust me, you will come back here. We're the best.
Wow.
And I left that bathroom completely uplifted from this obvious pride this woman took in her work and the contagiously glowing self-esteem that immediately transferred to me and made my respect just absolutely soar for her. And I thought to myself, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to change my perspective to be all about serving and uplifting others. And I want to do my job so well that neither I nor anyone else will be deterred by these invisible barriers that we put up with the haves and the have-nots.
Wow.
And my job, regardless of why I'm there, is to reflect Papa God's all-accepting love. And nobody wants to be around a pouty-outy.
A pouty-outy. That was a great story. I love that. Wow. Okay. So let's move on to developing strength for whatever challenge we might be facing. And this is where you recommend, of course, memorizing Scripture. And many women have heard that, hey, memorize some Scripture so you've got it handy when you're facing that challenge, when you need that strength. And yet, most women are like, oh, I can't do it. You just don't know. I just can't memorize Scripture. Well, what would you say about that?
I agree. I have felt that way many, many times in my life, that I know I should, I know I need to, I know I want to, but, the task is just so daunting. So I've tried to make it easier for women. I've developed what I call lifesavers. And these lifesavers are just little sweet nuggets from the Word. They're 20 words or less. And I list 2 years' worth of them if you memorize one a month, which is really easy when it's a tiny little verse like Colossians 2:7, let your living spill over into thanksgiving. Or 1 John 3:20, God is greater than our worried hearts. Or 2 Timothy 2:13, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. And there's just tons of these verses. Philippians 4:6, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. And so I've listed these out so that we can take them each once a month. I jot them right on my calendar. I do it at the beginning of the year or whenever I'm starting. And I put one on the very front, the very top page of the calendar for each month, and then I transfer it to sticky notes. I put it all over where I go, all my little stashes. Everywhere, my little chocolate stash, my, everywhere I tend to go, my Diet Cokes, I stick them in the refrigerator, everywhere, put them in my iPhone, and then every time I see one of those in my car, when I get in, I have it stuck on my visor, I repeat it out loud. And you don't have to do that very many times before it's sticks. It's stuck
Yes.
in your brain. It's
Yes.
entered into your heart, into your hard drive, where Papa God can use it
Yeah.
to talk to you and to lead you. Whenever he needs to, it's there. And he just whips it out. And I've so many times, and I mentioned them in the book, different situations I've been in, where all of a sudden one of my lifesavers appears in my mind, and I know that it's Papa God talking to me and guiding me, telling me what I need to do in this circumstance. And it's amazing. The communication then is both ways. I'm talking to him, and he's talking to me, and I'm listening. I can hear him.
I love it. That is such a perfect idea. And you're right. Some scriptures are really short. It's not like you have to memorize, a whole chapter or something, right? Okay, so let's talk about another biggie for women. So many women lack confidence. We want confidence, and we look at some other women in our lives that seem really confident, and we're like, oh, if only I could be as confident as her. How would you suggest that a woman who feels a lack of confidence gain that confidence?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with beginning to see ourselves as Papa God sees us. And not necessarily as we see ourselves, because everyone knows that we don't see ourselves realistically.
Right.
And most of the time with women, there are a few exceptions, but most of the time we're really hard on ourselves.
That's
we
right.
beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
We let guilt do a number on us, and we believe those inner voices of guilt, and the enemy uses that to continually beat us up and make us feel bad about ourselves. And I think if we can get away and turn that off back to the he and me retreat idea, whenever I'm feeling really, really beat up, I know it's time to take a he and me retreat. And I get away. I mute the world for as long as I can.
Yeah.
3 days is optimal. I've done 5 days where you get away, you just go somewhere with you and your Bible and your journal, and you pour yourself out to Papa God. You tell him everything, and you listen for his response. And if you can, get out in nature, because that is his beautiful handiwork.
Yes.
And he just restores us through that time with him. And it's amazing. And that restores our self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
And then we can start again. We can have a do-over, as I call it in my book. I have several instances of do-overs
Yes.
that we can do. It's possible.
Yeah. No, I love that.
We just need to get away and think and just be able to listen to him.
And I know some women are thinking, well, great for you, Deborah, but I couldn't possibly get away for 3 days, let alone 5. And you know what? But any time that you could get away, even if you got a babysitter for your young kids and got away for 3 or 4 hours and sat out in nature, as long as it's not freezing at the moment, whatever. I mean, even 3 or 4 hours with a Bible and a journal and asking God to speak to you could make a huge difference, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It's just something that it's not easy for anyone, and it doesn't. We have to plan. It doesn't come easy. We have to make it a priority.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk about the longing in a woman's heart, especially to feel cherished. I mean, we just have this deep instinctive longing to feel cherished. Sometimes a man in our life, a human being, might get us close to feeling that way, but we all know that men and all of us are imperfect. So how do we end up really feeling cherished by God? I mean, can we get there? Let's see what Deborah has to say about that in just a moment. Her book is called Too Loved to Be Lost. Back in the program with speaker and award-winning author Debora Coty. Again, her brand new book is called Too Loved to Be Lost. All right, so what about this longing in a woman's heart to just feel cherished? You have some thoughts in the book as to how we can learn to feel that way.
Yes, I do, and I think it's important for us to notice. We have to actually make ourselves notice Papa God's fingerprints on our lives, because otherwise we just merely go on our way considering things, oh, that's nice that happened. Oh, what a good coincidence. Oh, I'm so lucky today. But we need to realize that these are all things that Papa God is doing. He is responsible for these grace notes in our lives. I began calling them grace notes based on my 20 years of teaching piano lessons. And the grace notes are those teeny little notes beside the regular music notes that aren't really essential to the melody, but they add breadth and depth and beauty to the music. And that's what Papa God's grace notes are to us. They're physical demonstrations of His love for us. And some examples I put in my book, I have just so many. One of them was my friend Cheryl was pushing her baby down in a stroller down one of the sidewalks in our neighborhood when she suddenly looked up and saw a pit bull running toward her with a rope tied around its neck. And she knew about this dog. We all know about this dog. It's not a nice dog. It's very aggressive and unpredictable, and it's usually tied up in the owner's backyard. But he had apparently broken loose, and he was heading right for Cheryl. So she absolutely panicked. Cheryl is a good prayer warrior buddy friend of mine. We are in the same Bible group that we started for our neighborhood. We started a Bible study. And Cheryl sees this big, giant dog closing in fast with her baby in the stroller. So she shot up a rhino in the road prayer for protection, and she didn't have time to do anything else but throw herself in front of her baby carriage and just steel herself, waiting for the attack. And just as that dog drew near to Cheryl and the baby, he passed a street sign, and that flailing rope that was tied around his neck flew out and wrapped around the pole and yanked him to a dead stop there.
Oh, my.
And isn't that an awesome story? That's just an example of the grace notes. I mean, she could have said to herself, oh, I was just so lucky. But she knew that was Papa God's fingerprints and that He was telling her that He is there, He's aware, and He cares about her. And I think that is the way we women can really, really feel treasured and cherished, is if we recognize Papa God's grace notes in our lives. I have a lot more examples in the book. I don't know if you have time for me to tell anymore.
Well, let's have one more, because that was just so invigorating to hear that story. So share another one.
Well, this one gives me God bumps personally because it happened to me, and it was just such a wonderful thing. But I was speaking at a women's group about one of my favorite topics. It was chocolate. We were celebrating chocolate, and it was a large church. And about 6 weeks prior to the event, they started advertising for it and selling tickets. And many, many prayers had gone up for the Lord to bless this community outreach event so that women who were not necessarily interested in attending church or a, quote, religious service would come to celebrate chocolate. And so a week before the event, 400 tickets had been sold. And each table, they were going to have tables of 8, round tables, and they had ordered these 50 very, very fancy chocolate layer cakes from a local bakery to serve as the centerpieces. And these were not just your run-of-the-mill cakes. They were beautiful. They were just chocolate curls and doodads and ornate decorations everywhere.
Okay, you've got to stop describing that cake, or I'm gonna have a mutiny here. I'm gonna have to leave the studio and go get me some chocolate.
They were just culinary masterpieces, you know. So they had ordered these 50 cakes. And then during the days just right before this event, a whole rush of ticket orders came in, and the ladies just didn't want to turn anyone away. So they ordered another 5 cakes, but they were going to have to pick them up like a couple of hours before the program started. So as the designated cake picker-upper drove to the bakery on the afternoon of the event, on her way, she received a frantic call from the church. And they said, you know, we just sold 10 more last-minute tickets. We need another cake. And so she knew that there was no way the bakery could make another cake that fast. So she prayed about it. She said, I don't know what we're going to do here, Lord. Maybe if they just have any kind of chocolate cake at all, then we'll use that. So that's what she prayed. And then as she got there, she waited for the lady in the hairnet and the white apron to box up her cakes, the 5 that she was picking up, and she looked around the display cases, and there were no chocolate cakes, nothing. And so she turned to the lady as she handed her the cakes, and she said, I hate to ask this, but is there anything you can do to make us another chocolate cake? We just had one more. We need a 56th cake. And this woman stared at her a minute, and then this huge smile spread across her face, and she said, I'm the baker, and I have a surprise for you. And she disappeared into the back room, and in a couple minutes she reappeared holding one beautifully decorated chocolate cake exactly like the other 55.
Oh, my.
And she said, something told me I should make an extra cake. cake.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that awesome? Papa God just always gives me God bumps with these stories.
I know. Oh, I just love, I could listen to stories like that all day long because that is the kind of God that we have that just likes to bless us like that was not like an earth-shattering thing. Like if you didn't have that one extra cake, it would not have been the death of the event or, but I just love how God sometimes takes small little things just to say, I see you. I love you. I just want to bless you with another chocolate cake, right?
Exactly, and it brings this huge smile to your face and sometimes even tears to my eyes because I do feel cherished and I do feel loved because I have noticed these grace notes and that he is there, he's aware, and he cares.
I love that. Okay, we're going to take our very last break. When we come back, I want to touch on a couple of other topics here. One is how to develop trust in God. Because maybe some people listening, some women have had people that have not been trustworthy who have broken their trust. And maybe they're having a hard time trusting God that he will love them unconditionally, that he will be there, that they can kind of just release their anxieties and fears and trust him. You know what I mean? So let's tackle that one in just a moment. Debora Coty, my guest, her book is called Too Loved to Be Lost.
It's hard on a rainy day. You want to shut the world out and just be left alone, but don't run out on your faith. 'Cause sometimes that mountain you've been climbing is just a grain of sand.
Final minutes with Debora Coty, speaker and award-winning author. Her brand new book is called Too Loved to Be Lost. And let's talk to the women, Debora, that maybe are kind of living in a place of anxiety right now. They have some issues going on in their lives, and others have said, well, just trust God. And they're like, well, other people have failed me. Why should I really completely trust God? What do you say to those women?
Well, I have to tell a story that says it all. This has to do with that verse I mentioned earlier, Hebrews 13:5.
Yeah.
Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And that's a verse that I want to have tattooed across my forehead, so every time I look in the mirror, I will remember that.
Yes.
I made a terrible parenting error when my daughter was young, and it was terrible. There's no other way around it. She was 7 years old at the time. She had been having a really hard time with separation anxiety. Ever since she was born, she didn't like to let me out of her sight. But this one particular summer, it was even worse than usual, and I was completely wiped. I was exhausted, and nothing more than an adult timeout. That just sounded like heaven to me.
Yeah.
Well, our family every year goes on an annual Daytona Beach vacation with my parents and my sister's family. We have a timeshare, and we were all there together, and my kids loved playing with their cousins, my sister's family, and everybody was having a great time. And then my husband Chuck and I learned that we would have to come home about 3 days early to take care of something at home, and we weren't sure what to do. And my parents and sister offered to keep our kids and return them to us later at the end of the week. Well, that was just terrific by me. There's this a timeout that I needed so badly. And we knew our son would be fine with that, but we weren't sure how to get away with it with our daughter Cricket.
Right.
And we just knew she would have a meltdown and completely ruin our plans. So I made a decision, and it was a very bad one. At the time, it didn't seem so bad. It seemed like the only thing to do. It seemed like the logical thing to do. We wouldn't tell her. We would just disappear and not tell her we were going. So while she was playing with her cousins outside, we covertly packed our bags and snuck them into the car and disappeared.
Oh, my.
And then, oh, my goodness, it was such freedom. We were on our way home. It was a 3-hour drive. We turned off our phones, and we were almost giddy until I walked into the house. And the first thing I saw was her little teddy bear that she had left behind, draped over the couch, just kind of hanging there. And I just realized it hit me, what I had done.
Yeah.
I had abandoned my daughter. She was too young to understand why we had left, and all she knew was that the person that she trusted most in the whole world had deserted her.
Yeah.
And I had phone calls for 3 days with tears, and my mother describing this little girl who would sit by herself. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't play. She couldn't sleep. She just sat there in mourning for 3 days.
Oh.
And that trust was just destroyed. And it destroyed me when it was just horrible. It was something I couldn't undo right away. It took years for that trust to be redeveloped.
Yeah.
And that verse just really, really hit me hard, and it made me understand how secure I was with Papa God when he says, I will never leave you, never forsake you. We can't do that as human beings. We are going to let people down, but he will never let us down. And that trust is just so important. If we can finally get it through our heads that he is with us always, in that unconditional love with no limits. He will always forgive us. He will always, always let us come back and climb up on his lap again.
Well, and your daughter had to experience some healing for that hurt that she underwent during that time. And really, this is a chapter that you talk about later in the book about how Papa God specializes in broken heart surgery. So what do you say to the woman today who is reeling from something where she was hurt deeply by maybe her spouse or whatever? I mean, what can you offer her today?
Well, I kind of call that friendly fire, which is the term that the military uses when a soldier is accidentally shot by someone in their own army. And I think that happens to us a lot, unfortunately. Yeah. And it has the only way out of it is with forgiveness, the act of forgiveness. And compassion and mercy come next, after that. But the act of forgiveness has to come first. We have to demonstrate forgiveness in order to feel forgiveness. And I talk about that quite a lot, and I think that's important because we have to live with friendly fire, not only from our families, but from our churches, the leadership, other Christians. We have sniper attacks, and the enemy is really right behind that. He uses that to try to rupture our faith and our trust and our love, those cords that bind our personal relationships together. Yeah. And it's a matter of us having to understand that mercy trumps justice, absolutely every time. Yeah. Mercy is all-powerful, all-dominating, all-victorious. And sometimes we just want justice. We want that person to be punished. Right. And if God won't do it, we'll do it. And we find ways to punish them, for the friendly fire, for wounding us. But I think there's a process of healing that we have to go through, and it takes time. Yeah. It's not a quick fix. I wish it was, but and it's something we all go through. So we have to realize we're not alone in this.
Yeah, yeah. And you bring up the verse in that chapter. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, which is Psalm 147:3. And you recommend spending, I think you said 15 minutes a day of just time just with God, where He can start to bind up your broken heart. Correct?
Oh, so true. I do prayer walks, which get me outside in His wonderful creation, gets me away from my house with all my burdens and the things I have to do and the place I have to go and the people I see and all the people trying to depend on me. Right. 15 minutes, I get out there, I walk, I just I pray the whole time. And it's a refreshing, glorious time, which is so important. And you don't have to walk, but you need to do something every day to spend that time with Papa God.
That's right, with Papa God. Thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing all of this with us. So many thought-provoking ideas and scriptural truths to help us not feel so alone or lost. Thank you so much. Ooh, well, we have a couple of copies of this book to give away. If you'd like to get one sent to you in the mail, as our available copies last, go ahead and email producer@DebbieChavez.com. Again, it's producer@DebbieChavez.com, and ask for the book Too Loved to Be Lost. We'll see if we can get one to you. Coming up in 10 minutes on the Carolyn Merriman Show, her topic is how to create closeness after conflict. That'll be in 10 minutes here at faithplace.org. And until we meet again, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him.